evening, everyone. Your hosts tonight are myself, Richard Jurgensen, and Ann Weller. Welcome to Elder Talk 4. Our thanks tonight go to our sponsors, Willits Economic Localization, or WELL, and Little Lake Grange 670. Information on both of these fine organizations are available at the front table, so help yourself on your way out. A special thanks to the Grange kitchen staff and the cooks who provided the snacks tonight. Your donations will go to help with the rebuilding of this beloved community resource. Tonight's conversations are being recorded and will be aired on our local Channel 3 and will also be posted and viewed on the World Wide Web at willitstv.org. Going worldwide now.
All right, so yes, we're here again. This is the fourth in a series. It's been great fun to spend time with these gentlemen and with their predecessors on this stage. And I just want to remind us all why we do this. Why do we care about these stories from our past? And you each know the answer. The knowledge that our elders carry and their stories give us a sense of place, a continuity with our history, our shared past, our unique memories as families and community. The past three talks have given us some great opportunities to ask questions, some great memories, and some ideas for future localization. So what have we forgotten that will improve our future? At the end of the talk, you'll have an opportunity to ask some questions. We'll take hands up from the audience at the end of the general interview, and I'll repeat your question. So if it's succinct, then we can get it on the tapes for everyone. So tonight we're hearing from these long-standing community elders. Mervin Pinches, sitting to your left, right here. And Mervin, you're a youngster. Do you dare share your age with us?
The 9th of May, I was 91 years old.
And here to my right is Hank Strock. Hank. And Hank is young enough to be hauling all of these tables and chairs around the Grange all the time. He does a great job of it, and so I know he's... How old are you, Hank?
Well, I was born on the 9th of May, 1931.
You're kidding!
Good month. So was Harry Truman.
So I want you guys to share your memories with us tonight and take us back to an era when life was very different. People were directly responsible for their food and shelter. Energy sources were few, and you had to have many skills to survive. So I've talked to you about that a few times, Mervin, the many skills part. Let's get up to that through taking you a little bit through your life in Laytonville, your schooling. You want to talk about that?
Well, my first job was hauling the mail out to Branscombe when school was out in the summertime. But I wasn't only about 15, 16 years old then. But I think Bud paid me $1.25, $1.50 a trip to make it out and back. And sometimes the Branscombe Road would be so muddy they'd have to go in there with a team of horses in the buggy. But he had an old boy there that had a team of horses. His name was Lou Abar. And Lou used to take the mail when the Model T Ford couldn't make it. And it wasn't a good road either.
So
Then, the next job I had, I think, was I worked for Frank Silva here in Willits. We hauled tan bark from out Fort Bragg Road up to Sherwood and up Leggett Valley. Frank paid us pretty good. There was two of us boys drove truck to Santa Rosa to the tannery down there. They ground it and shipped it off to Japan or China or somewhere. It was on 2nd Street, I remember that. And $6 a trip. And it took a day and a half pretty near to make a trip.
So you overnighter down there.
No, I'd get up about 2 o'clock in the morning and I'd take off and get back and get loaded up, and I'd come back here to Willits and stay at my sister's. And round again, but to get the $6, you had to make the round.
Before we started on your working career, I'd like to talk a little bit about your schooling back there in that one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah, that was quite a school there. There wasn't, I don't think there was 20 kids going to it then, when I was going there.
You were sharing with us what you ate for lunch at school.
Lots of times we'd have bacon powder biscuits and beans would be in our sandwiches. Today, they'd go pretty hungry before you could get them to eat a bacon powder biscuit and beans.
You're good with honey.
Pardon?
Those biscuits are good with honey.
Oh, well, I like bacon powder biscuits.
So you had to take your own cup to school for water? Is that-
No,
No?
they had cups there that we had to pump. We had to pump the water. They had a well there, an old pump. We had some good teachers. If you didn't get it done by 3 o'clock, you stayed till maybe 6 o'clock. And they didn't care how long they stayed because they didn't have no place to go anyway.
So there was no homework because you all had chores to do when you went home.
Yeah, right.
That's right. Talk about your uncle's ice cream parlor.
Well, he used to get us kids to churn his ice cream, and then he had some kind of rig you had to rock it to get water to make,
Carbonation, wasn't
yeah,
it?
carbonated water.
The soda?
And you had to rock this thing back and forth, and it seemed like we was rocking it half of the day. And all he'd give us would maybe be an ice cream cone. He wasn't too generous.
This was in Laytonville, not Willits. I just Well, that's the ice cream parlor story. What are we skipping here, Nina? I'll put you on the spot.
He had a restaurant too.
Well, you could ask him who his teachers were, if you names that
Yeah.
people would know.
How about your teachers there, Mervin, in Laytonville School, grammar school?
Well, Lita Beckley was my teacher, and Bella Harwood was my second grade teacher.
Bud Harwood, old Bud Harwood's wife?
Right.
Belva York.
Bella, or York was her name. Then there was a teacher there, her name was Pat Stevens. And some of the kids that didn't care for those programs she'd put on, she was always having plays. One time they was going to have our pictures taken, and my brother and I, we wasn't going to get our pictures taken, so we skipped out. And she come and got us by the ears.
Ask him about Christmas play.
Christmas plays.
Yeah. One time I was in a store there in Laytonville, and this Indian girl come up and she said, "You don't know me, do you?" I said, "No, I don't think so." She says, "Buddy and Boots and me, we wanted a Christmas tree." I said, "Yep, I know you." I hadn't seen her in years.
Oh, that's great. So let's skip to Hank here. We're talking about schooling and stuff. Hank, you grew up in an unusual situation. You want to talk a little bit about Camp Rest and Nashmead?
But before you do, let's start at the beginning here. Where were you born, Hank?
I was born in Willits,
And who was your physician?
Raymond Badcock,
So you're born here at Howard Hospital.
Howard Hospital.
At what age did you move to Nashmead?
We lived at Camp Rest until 1942, and then my dad got a foreman job at Bell Springs, and then at Nashmead, and that's when we moved to Nashmead.
Wasn't Camp Rest owned by your grandparents?
It was owned by our grandparents, and my father and mother went up there to take care of it, I think about 1925 or 26. My dad drove a team out of San Francisco, crossed on a ferry, and I believe it was the Dill Ranch where he left the wagon, and he packed all the stuff on the horses over to Camp Rest. Made 2 or 3 trips.
What about the train? Was the train running then to get back in?
The train was running, yes, then. It started running in 1910, I believe.
And it was the only way in and out?
That was the only way in and out. Either that or walk, or horseback.
What about your school? Does your schooling sound similar to Mervin's?
Yeah, it was a little one-room schoolhouse up there, yeah. And then there was an Indian school across the river. In 1939, they built a bridge, a one-of-a-kind bridge across the river. It had one pier and the other end of the bridge anchored into solid rock. One engineer and all unskilled labor built that bridge. And I don't know if my brother-in-law back there worked on it or not, but he might have.
Did you pull yourself across, or how was it operated?
No, it was a footbridge. You could ride a horse across it, but it had 45 angles on both ends. You couldn't get a car on it. It was wide enough, I think you could have drove a car across it.
I rode across it.
You rode across it?
It didn't last long, though.
1955, I think.
The flood took it all out. I think the old cable is still across it.
One of them.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that 55 flood. Do you mind if we skip ahead? Just skip ahead to that 55 flood. Let's talk about what happened. What were the exciting moments? Maybe Mervin, you can go first on that 55 flood there.
Well, when it started, Joe Seal and I were duck hunting over in Williams. And it started raining over there, and I told Joe, I said, we better get out of here. And by the time we got to Lake County, it was flooding there, and we had to go around Lakeport to get home. And we were going along about Longville, and I said, Joe, you know one of these times that it's going to start like this and forget to stop. About 9 o'clock, he called me on the phone, and everybody was on the phone line, you know, and everybody, you'd hear them get on the phone to listen to see what was going on. And Ed Downing was the road boss, and Ed was talking to Sackett, which was the head of the highway up there, and he said, Clarence, I'm at Check Lodge, and there's no way I can get home. There's 5 feet of water across the road at Spire Rock Road. And from then on, there was no roads. It just kept on raining. It was raining, I mean, and over an inch an hour there for a while. So it was flooding.
You got anything to say about that, Hank?
You know, in 55, when I had the flood, I was working in the car department in Willits, and I got laid off. I went to work in a B&B gang, but it was mostly on the south end, and that was after the damage was done. I was down there repairing it.
Now, tell people what a car department is.
Car department, that's where you take cars in. They have inspectors. When a train,
Railroad cars.
railroad cars, yeah. When a train comes in, they have inspectors look at the cars, and if they find any cars that's defective, they bad order them and set them out. And they go to the rip track for repair. And I was working on the rip track at that time, repairing cars, and got laid off on account of the flood. So I went to work in a B&B.
Down south.
That's B&B is bridge and building.
Oh, Bridge and Building.
This could be a good time to mention that Hank worked for the railroad Northwestern Pacific for, what, 47 years?
Yeah, about that.
And you started working at, what, age 16?
16. You know, I was thinking I was maybe an old timer, and I read in the last labor paper that there was a guy 83 years old still working, and he went to work in 44, and his son went to work when he was 20, and they're both going to retire at the same time. And he worked for the Southern Pacific, and then now it's the Union Pacific. And he's one of the guys still working.
Getting back to that flood, I just got me a new Jeep, and I was going out above the house there on the Spire Rock Road, and this helicopter come over and sit down alongside of me. And these three fellows got out, the pilot and the head engineer for Morrison Knudsen, and his name was Harold Guard, the superintendent, and he introduced himself, and he said, "You wouldn't want to trade this Jeep for that helicopter, would you?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Well, we flew into Spy Rock yesterday, and they said they had a hell of a time getting out for some reason. So he said, tell that pilot to take you any place you want to go." And I flew all the way up to the river with the guy, and coming back north end of the ranch, I looking down and I see this rock, and I thought, that rock's not where it should be. And I told the pilot, I said, turn around. I said, I want to see what that rock did. And that rock was half as big as this whole room. Well, what had happened, the water had washed on both sides of it and rolled it over. And it was kind of funny when I seen it.
The power of water.
Yeah,
And that was a 55 flood?
yeah. Well, 65 was just as bad.
Worse.
Well, it snowed more on
Yeah.
65.
You know, let's, I know we're jumping all over the place here, but let's talk about snow for a minute. Let's talk about some of those snowstorms that you've mentioned.
Well, my grandfather and my uncle said that 89 and 90 was the worst snows that they ever seen in the country, that there was 5 feet of snow down on the highway. Well, there was no highway then. But it's in this diary of my grandfather's right here, that that year it killed pretty near every bit of livestock that was in the country in 89 and 90. And it damn near did that in the 60s when it, and 49 and 50, it did a pretty good job then. Gross, they lost practically all their livestock and even their saddle horses. I did take good care of my saddle horses because that's the only way you travel in those bad snows.
What were some of those snow depths that you've mentioned?
Well, at my house, which was 2,800 feet, there was 5 feet of snow on my lawn. Mm-hmm. I had a little cat there, D4, and it got so bad I couldn't move it because I'd shoved the snow out and I didn't have room and I didn't have power enough. I'd go out there and the cat would sit down and then I'd be high-centered. I had to get a bigger cat in. And there was a couple that bought a little piece of property above me, and I told them before they built, I said, this weather gets pretty bad here. But they thought I just didn't want them around because it was close to the ranch. That wasn't my idea. Anyway, his wife was real sickly, and nobody's seen him, and I couldn't get their horseback even, it was so damn deep. And I got a bigger cat and went in there, and when I got up to their cabin, because my brother-in-law was the one that was running the cat, I told him, I said, we going to go up to Ben Janik's because his wife's sickly, and he took her to the doctor pretty regular, but you couldn't get in there with a snow plow. And when I got to his cabin, the dog was running up over the top. He had to go down and like he was going downhill to get into the house. But he didn't stay long after that. He believed me then.
So what are the kind of skills that, it sounds like you had to develop a lot of skills to survive in those hills. And you know, you were a rancher, a logger, equipment operator, mechanic.
I wasn't much of a mechanic, but I could do pretty much of anything when it come to, I worked at a butcher shop, I did a lot of butchering, and I worked pretty near every day on the Longville to Osris Road until October, and they moved me from up there. I hauled the first load of dirt off of Oilwell Hill out here. They had a shovel and 2 trucks that come there in October, and we didn't get no rain until just before Christmas. And on the 9th day of January, on the 37, there was 18 inches of snow right here in town. I was living out there on Oak Street then. But in them days, they didn't have cats and graders and things to clean it up like they do today. Hem Street and Bell, they never had only 2 cats, and they were the best. But they had shovels, and we did lots of shovel and trucks.
Talk about that Dos Rios Road, building the Dos Rios Road. That's kind of got some interesting stories. You learning how to drive a truck right on the spot, all that kind of thing?
Well, that's a story too. I was cross-cutting with a couple of fellows that was damn good cross-cutters. And if you didn't show up for work, you might as well figure you got to look for another job. And they both were pretty heavy drinkers, and if one of them didn't show up, they'd put me as the cross-cutter. So one day I seen this guy, and he was driving the truck, and I drove truck a little bit, and I told the shop foreman, his name was Oscar Gregg, I said, Oscar, if that fellow is there today, if he's a truck driver, I am too. Well, he said, you'll be on a truck right away. I said, oh God, don't put me on a truck. I said, and can me? I said, I know I can pull a crosscut, because they were cutting it all into 4-foot wood. The right-of-way, all the wood went to Marysville in 4-foot wood. And that's the first truck driving I did. Of course, it had to come on a day that everything didn't work good either. The truck I was supposed to get on, right there where you can look down into Cherry Creek, there's a little hump, it's there today. And I was going to drive the afternoon shift. And the handbrake worked on the wheels, and your foot brake worked on the drive shaft. And they'd pull on those handbrakes till they'd wear them ratchets down pretty good. Well, he parked the truck I was supposed to get on, and the ratchet flew off. Down the mountain it went into the river. They hooked onto it, pulled it up, pretty near to the top again, the cable broke. Down to the river it went again. But them old trucks, you couldn't hurt them. They were just iron, and that was about it. But anyway, I knew the shovel runner real well, and driving under a shovel, the shovel runner can give you a bad time if he wants to. And Fred Hemstreet was a shovel runner, but he wasn't the guy that did it easy for you. If you didn't do everything just right, he might pick you up and drop you down with a bucket and that kind of stuff. But when I got in the truck, I talked to Lloyd Swenson. He was the shovel runner, and I said, Lloyd, God, I don't know whether I took this truck driving job, I should have or not. And he says, hell, Merv, you'll make it. He says, I'll just hang the bucket up there and you get under it. So I backed up there to get under the load, and I looked down the road, and here comes old Dave Hemstreet in a big old long black Buick, and he comes up and hits me on the leg. He says, are you a truck driver? I said, you damn right I am. And down the road I went, and I got along good with them. They even thought I was a pretty good skinner.
There's some really great stories. Mervin has tons of them. I'm trying to figure out which ones would be the most fabulous. Talk about the party line, your Uncle Albie party line.
Well, in the early days, everybody was on the same line, and the phone rang. Hell, you'd have 5 people that'd be there to listen to who you were going to talk to and what you were going to talk about. Well, my uncle, he was held to play the fiddle. And he used to get on the phone and play the fiddle, and everybody'd get on there and listen to Albie play the fiddle.
You got any party
That's his basket right there.
This is his basket?
That's his basket. He'd walk to town and carry that basket with his groceries. I used to stay with him quite often when I was a little guy.
You still use that, don't you? That basket?
Yeah, I still use it.
That's wonderful.
That basket was in the newspaper, photo of him harvesting tomatoes in his garden, that basket.
Yeah.
Right.
Hank, I wanted to ask you about growing up on the river. You said you used to do a lot of hunting and fishing, and you didn't have electricity out there, did you?
No. No electricity. Kerosene, We had a gas refrigerator, kerosene lights, and
You grew your food.
we grew most of our food, yes, we did. And we got a few staples come in on the passenger train. But most of the stuff we raised, my mother canned stuff all the time.
What kind of fishing was there to be done? Was it year-round?
You could fish year-round, yeah, for trout and stuff, and the creeks was really good. The rivers, steelhead and salmon in the fall and spring. A lot of big fish.
Lots of trout, too.
Lots of trout.
Woodman and Shell Rock.
Iron Creek,
Blue
Rock
I could fill a basket anytime I wanted to.
Gill Creek.
And I had a big basket.
So regarding, talking about the river just for a minute, could you comment on maybe the change in the, either of you, for instance, in the water depths from, years past to what it is today?
Well, I think the water is about the same amount of water in the river, but the riverbed is raised up. In 1948, I believe, I was at Shively, and we used to dive off of a summer bridge. And this is on the South Fork of the Eel River. We used to dive off of a summer bridge into the water, about 8 foot down, and the water was about 8 foot deep. And now that bridge is buried under about 30 foot of gravel. No more summer bridge. It's still there, but buried.
Silted in.
Yeah, 64 flood covered it.
I think the main part about our fish is we just don't have the water. Because, hell, when I was a kid, we had high water every time that we had a bad storm. When I was going to school, the oak trees just this side of the feed store going out Branscombe Road, the water would get up to that tree. And I haven't seen that in years and years. But we had lots of fish. They could come up any of those little streams. They come up Woodman at one time until that washed out down at the mouth. And that job the Fish and Game did there, I asked Claude one time, Hoagland, I said, Claude, do you ever see a fish go up that ladder? Oh, he says, Mervin come up there and looked at it and swam around a little bit and fell over dead.
What, lazy?
Well, you've seen the fish ladder, didn't you?
Yeah.
You couldn't get nothing up at hell. And he got $12,000 for putting that thing in there. And I don't know if that stump still held on it or not. I haven't been there since I left the ranch.
But I've seen the steelhead go over that.
They used to go over because
Yeah.
I used to catch those summer salmon in Woodman.
Yeah. But I've seen him. We used to stop on that bridge every once in a while, and I've seen him jump and make it over there.
Well, old John, what the hell was his name there? He went down there with his net, and when they'd get to jumping, he'd catch him. He had the house up there on the hill. It's on Truax.
Truax, yeah.
Old Truax, he kept in fish. But he had a long net. Fish would jump, he just shoved that net under it.
Was that legal?
That's illegal. I always thought that was a sick bird.
Somebody says that they was down there catching those fish with a net, and the guy looked up on the hill, and Lutz was looking down.
Yeah.
And so when he caught the fish, he just throwed it on over. And Lutz come on down, and they wanted to know what he was doing. He said he was helping a fish over the fall.
Well, he needed help. Those fish did. Those fish, Bill Townsend, he's quite interested in fish, you know. He said, Merv, I'm going to go to a meeting up at the mouth of the Smith River. He said, I'd like to have you go up. I said, well, Bill, I don't want to go up to the meeting, but I said, I want to go to a friend I know in Medford. I want to go see him. And I said, I'll stop at the Smith River deal. And so they had a big feed there and had a lot of fish and game guys. And I was listening to them, and somebody got to talking. Well, it was one of their big shots in Fish and Game about the fish hatchery at the mouth of Mad River, and they were all dying. And me, I had to open my mouth. I said, I might be able to help you there on those fish that are dying. And, oh, how's that? I said, if you put a little bluestone in it, I said, it'll kill that virus. There was a little bug, what it was. Did you get on that fish and kill them dead as hell? Well, I wasn't very popular there telling them that. It'd kill everything, man, woman, and livestock. And I said, damn funny, I got 3 kids, and I put it in my spring all the time, and they're still pretty healthy. Well, then to top it all off, I'm down at Bill Townsend. He's got a bunch of doughboy pools that he raised them in. And Bill says, I got a load of fish coming today, and I want you to go out with me. So I rode out with him. This load of fish comes up, and this guy gets out. I said, where'd these fish come from? He said, Mad River Hatchery. I said, hell, I heard they all died there. He couldn't raise them. He said, we fixed that. I said, how? Bluestoned it.
What is bluestone?
Oh, it's just a little powder, and I don't know if you can buy it today, but I talked to Perry Smith here when I was telling him about this deal at Mad River. And Perry says, hell, we put it in a sack and go around the main water pond here every year with the bluestone.
So that was put in the Willits water supply every year.
Yeah. So, and I doctored my lambs with bluestone.
I guess we better find out what that was.
Well, if it was any good, they probably outlawed it.
Well, I'm sure they did. That's like sheep dip and,
KRS?
KRS, yeah, they outlawed that. You can still buy it if you go over to Reno or someplace. In Nevada, you can buy it, but not in California. And sheep dip and KRS was 2 things he wanted on the ranch.
Let's talk about sheep. The shearing of the sheep. You got some great stories about how many sheep can be sheared and what the price of wool was. It went up and down. And you got anything in that book of yours about that?
Well, the sheep business was pretty good for a time. When the boys and I took over the Red Wine Ranch, the sheep business, the lamb business was damn good. And we took over, there was 1,400 head of the ewes and the replacement lambs and the bucks. There were 1,400 head of them. And we did pretty good. Of course, that winter come along there, and I'll tell out of me one winter, I think I lost around 300 ewes that winter. And my neighbor to the north, Charlie Bucknell and Rose was on the Lumblade Ranch. And Lumblade didn't own it then. I think Lewis Hurt was on it. He owned it then. And when I talked to Charlie the next spring, Charlie said he was out 84 head of cows, and he didn't think he was going to look for them very far.
Now, which winter was that?
It was in 50, 51, no,
48, 49.
48.
Yeah, 48, 49.
And what about the shearing of the sheep again? You were able to get a price for your wool. You were able to sell it.
Well, wool went from over $1 down to practically nothing. You can't even sell it, I don't think, today.
But was it during the war?
Yeah, during the war, the wool price was over $1. Today, it costs you $2.50 to get them sheared, and you can't even sell the wool. I sheared Frank Simmer's sheep the first time. I charged him 2 bits, and he thought I was robbing him. You remember Frank?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy, he was tighter than... well, he was going to get the last walnut, and he fell out and broke his neck.
Yeah, we used to, my dad used to drop us off when he was, me and my brother, and we'd go pick cherries there.
Yeah, he had a lot of cherries.
And they got most of them. We took a few home.
Yeah. Oh, he was a good old Frank, but he was pretty close.
Hank, I wanted to ask you some questions about, again, growing up on the river there, some of the things that you used to do for entertainment. You know, there wasn't television, there wasn't the local cinema to go to, there weren't sidewalks as we know of them. You didn't play on skateboards. What kind of things did you make up?
Well, we we dug roads in the side of the hill there and made little wooden cars and shoved them around. A few things like that. We had a couple of scooters that we rode on and a wagon that my uncle made a set of hames for. Hooked a goat to that. But a slide come down and took the goat. And that was the end of that.
A lot of swimming, a lot of...
Oh, a lot of, I mean, we lived in the river in the summertime. I think I could swim before I could walk. But we had a lot of fun up there.
What about them water eels?
The which?
The eels, were there any?
Oh, there was a lot of eels in the river, yeah.
Did people eat the eels?
Some of them did, we never did. Some people liked them. But we never ate them.
I ate some out of the Klamath River that wasn't too bad, but I was about half crop.
Yeah. I would like to say something about that 48, 49 winter that he was talking about. We was at a place called Steelhead and working in a tunnel up there. And that river come up, it was raining, and the river was pretty high, you could hear it roaring. In the morning I woke up and everything was quiet, couldn't hear nothing. And I went to the door and looked out and I couldn't see nothing. I went and got a flashlight and shined it out and the water was right there, you know, where the steps went down. The steps was gone. So I went to the other side and it was next to the track, the main line, and the steps were still there. And I went down and the track had washed out from the inside of the wheels all the way back to the high rail. Everything was gone.
Were you stuck?
And the water was right up there to the ties. So I went down to the cookhouse and it was breakfast time, and I told the foreman, I said, the water under my car washed the track out. And he never even ate. He just went to the telephone, and the first train come by, pulled that outfit cars out of that place.
What were you working on at the time?
We was working on a tunnel, which we worked on it, and that was in 49, 55, it burnt. And they had to go in there and gunite the whole tunnel. That was at Steelhead.
Which tunnel was that?
31.
Tunnel 31. Can you show us on the map there?
Sure. Maybe not. This is.
It doesn't go up kind of. Island Mountain is as high as you
Yeah, this goes Island Mountain. We'd have to go over on the other one, but it's up in
Humboldt County?
Humboldt County, yeah.
I see.
It's this side of Fort Seward, about 4 miles, I'd say, this side of Fort Seward. Past Alder Point, about 3 miles, something like that.
What was breakfast there in the cookhouse?
Bacon and eggs and hot cakes, coffee.
Sounds like a Grange breakfast.
Sound like a Grange breakfast.
Well, I was reading that in, I think, your sister's little article there, where they all went on strike because they were feeding them beans for breakfast.
That was probably in the extra gang. I think one time we was at Kickawaukie, and they closed. They had 2 extra gangs and the B&B gang, and they closed one cookhouse of the extra gang, and both extra gangs was eating in the same cookhouse. And then on the weekend, they closed extra gang's cookhouse and they sent them over to our outfit to eat. So when they come over there, they charged them transit rates, you know, because the regular boarder got a cut rate. And if you was a transit, you paid a higher rate for your meals. So they charged them transit rates. So the next weekend, we went over to their outfit to eat. And I went in there and sat down, and Roadmaster was in there eating, and I asked him, I said, how come I got to pay transit rates? And he kept on eating. Hey, Jim, how come I got to pay transit rates? Kept on eating. I said, "Hey, Jim, you're paying for my dinner." "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm eating away from home. I'm on an expense account, same as you." So they paid for my meals.
Oh, very clever. Just ask for it, really.
Yeah, I mean, then the rest of them wanted theirs.
You started something.
I said, "Well, I always did." I always started something.
I know you got stories about that. I'm not sure I want to even get you going in that direction.
Speaking of restaurants, did either of you ever eat at the Beanery down at the train station?
I did. Years and years ago, way back in the 30s.
Was that just for lunches?
I don't know. We was in there for a train, and we went in there and had a meal.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Willits for a minute. You had a story, you were going to tell us about the flour mill, the Golden Eagle Flour Mill in Willits, delivered flour on the train, on the passenger express up to Nashmead.
Well, probably anybody that wanted it, they could got it. Golden Eagle Milling Company, you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Could you tell her exactly where it was at? I tried to tell her.
It was right there where Pete Hathaway put his little building back there.
Yeah, right, yeah.
The livery stable is there.
Right in front of that old dry cleaning outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The old boy that run it when I was a kid, his name was Ruel,
Any relation to Vic?
his dad.
So they were milling flour there.
Well, I didn't know about that, but they did a lot of feed work.
Yeah, they would. I think they milled the flour. You took wheat in it, they'd make flour out of it.
Yeah, well, they couldn't eat it.
But we used to get that flour, and it had a big Golden Eagle on the sacks,
Yeah.
50-pound sack.
They sold out to, what the hell was it? The Golden Eagle in Petaluma.
Probably.
Ruel sold out. They had a fellow come there and run it, and I can't think of his name.
But I know they had truck scales in there. I weighed a truck in there one time.
Well, let's change the subject back to ranching for a minute. Talk about riding up in the mountains on your horse with your buddies, looking for sheep and staying over at cabins and all that. Was that a regular lifestyle, or was that a one-time story?
Oh, that was around the clock. You had to move them sheep around. You didn't want to get them snowed in the high mountains. They got snowed in anyway. The damn sheep, they want to go to the highest peak to bed or shade up. And when we had one of them big snows there, I had several horses there, and I run them up and down. I led them up and down for half a day to get beat down so that the sheep could make it, to get them down out of the snow.
You had to make a trail with a horse.
Yeah.
So
No, the cabin was mostly in the summertime. We'd take the sheep over there on the north side in the summertime. Usually right after I marked the lamb, so I'd take some of them in there. My yearling replacements, so I put them in February. But you could get snow then too, but it don't last long. It melts off pretty fast.
Now, when you were ranching here in Little Lake Valley, what time frame was that?
I was working on Oil Hill when I decided I was going to change my job. I got kind of tired of driving equipment. I run a roller one summer in Laytonville, and boy, that was something I didn't want. When I finally got something that paid a little more. Anyway, my brother, he was still going to high school. And my dad, he heard about a little bunch of milk cows over on Fort Bragg. The old boy wanted to sell them. But we separated the milk and shipped the cream to Petaluma for a long while. Then the girls opened up the creamery here, and they started taking our whole milk. Well, I don't know what happened there, but I think they shut them down too. But they were getting damn strict about everything then.
Mervin, what year was that?
What year was that? Yeah. In 37.
What else you got in your books there, Mervin? I don't want to miss out on some of your page markers, and you've got that.
This is my grandfather's diary here.
Yeah.
And he had some funny little articles in here. But he's got in here about the snow, too. There's where he put in there about the snow.
How come you don't need glasses and I do? 6 feet at Bell Springs, February 13th. What year? 1947?
47.
That's on the hill.
Huh?
Bell Springs on the hill.
Yeah.
Fighting snow. Wow. Oh, here's the new Purity building opening on Commercial Street. Wednesday, February 12th, 1947. We got a lot of information in here. That's great.
The old Purity building used to be across where the new church is.
On Commercial?
On Commercial, right on the corner.
Oh, yes. Okay.
That's where the old Purity building was, and the doctor's offices were upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Dentist
Safeway's
office.
out where the Purity, or the Safeway was out where the
Post office.
post office there. That's where they
They
was.
moved it around.
But the first one I can remember of was here on Main Street. I think they moved around pretty much at the time.
Hank, I think you were talking about mustard plasters, weren't you?
Oh yeah, when we was kids and
Want to explain what a mustard plaster
you
is?
get colds, you get a mustard plaster put on you.
What is that?
Huh?
What is that?
Well, I don't know how they made it out of mustard and something, and they put it in a pad and put it on your chest.
Hot as hell.
Hot as hell.
You didn't fake getting a cold with that.
But the old timers, they used to put fried onions on them,
On your chest?
on their chest.
Fried onions.
Yeah, but
Kind of good.
I guess I wasn't old enough for the fried onions. But I sure got the mustard plasters.
We'll get back on the railroad, but I wanted to bring up the park here in town, the band shell, and the roller rink, across the street from your house.
Yeah.
So you have some interesting memories of
Well, a dance
that era.
hall was there too.
And a dance hall. Now, were you living in Laytonville then? Is that when you used to
Yeah,
come
I
down?
was-
You'd ride down on horseback?
Yeah, bring the
Frontier
horse
days?
down.
You want to tell
Oh, yeah,
one of those?
that's a great story.
Want to tell one of those stories?
Pardon?
You want to mention that one?
The time you rode your horse down from Laytonville and you competed in the rodeo and then rode back? I just
Well,
told the
I
story.
didn't
But
do much
Tell us.
competing. I was pretty young when they would come down here, but I did leave my horse here at Ruel's livery stable. And Warren Woodruff, he had some friend here, and he had his horse here. These girls wanted to ride, and he wanted to borrow my horse. And I said, Warren, it's fine if she knows how to ride, but if she don't know how to ride, you better keep her hell off a cap, because he'll take her down. Because he raced him quite a bit. He could run like hell, too. So she gets on up there. Well, the horse took off, and he didn't make the turn here. He dumped her in the street. And everybody run out there and was giving Warren hell for putting her on a mean horse. And, well, she just didn't know how to ride.
when was that?
Oh, it was way back there. I don't know, probably in 28 or so along there.
Tell us about that lariat over there leaning on your uncle's back.
Oh, that's been on a lot of calves. I used to rope around with Lee Persico there, and last time I was up there, I broke the Honda out, and I was tying one in it, and Lee comes over, he says, I'm going to buy you a new rope, and I told him about it a while ago, but I haven't got that new rope yet.
Well, Lee, what about that?
It's on its way. Railroad.
Now, there's a story y'all missed. He was talking to Lee down there about Lee's grandpa and the red wine, and can you go over that again?
Well, Lee's grandfather, we had the Rancho Primero then, and the main buildings was up where the forestry is today. That was the main hotel, and a lot of the buildings was there. They had a sawmill there, and it was usually it was somebody had it that bought it for speculation. But anyway, old man Persico, Frank, he'd bring those two big white mules up every spring to work on the Red Mountain Road, which belonged to Emma Hughes. And he always bring a little keg of red wine. And when he went through Laytonville, everyone in Laytonville knew where he was headed. He was headed for the sheep camp. One time, I guess he killed a deer up there, and my uncle, he was a judge there in Laytonville, and some people couldn't understand Frank too good. I could some things. Here he comes down to the judge's office, and we was talking to him, and he said, Franklin, he's got a pension. And I said, well, fine. I thought he said he had a pension. He got a pension for killing a deer. He was quite a guy.
Hank, I wanted to ask you something about Island Mountain. You said there used to be a mill up there, a lumber mill? Is that right?
Yeah, they had a little mill on there.
Timber mill? Was that for making ties? Or?
They had a mill up there. They made tunnel timbers and stuff from 1907 to whenever that tunnel opened. But Sexton, you know where Sexton Spur's at? Yeah, Isle Mountain.
Yeah.
It was right up the hill from about 4 miles, I guess, above Sexton.
I've been to that, where the old mill was.
Yeah, and that was the old railroad had that mill up there.
Well, they had a mill at Camp Rest, too, at one time.
Yeah, but they hauled the timbers around Isle Mountain on the other side of the river to the east end of that tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that people now would call it the north end, but railroad talk, it was the east end.
I know, you took me through that the other day. I still
But on the east end of the tunnel, and then they had a high line across the river there that they brought them timbers across. And we took some of those fir timbers out, 1964, 65, somewhere along in there. And they was like petrified. I mean, you couldn't cut them with a chainsaw. You could get about halfway through and you had to sharpen your chainsaw. They was hard.
Mm. What was the nationality component of some of the railway workers back then? Wasn't it a pretty wide variety of nationalities?
Yeah, they had a lot of people, Greeks, they called them, I guess. Worked on the railroad, and I guess there was Italians and not Switzerland, but
Swedish?
Swedish. A lot of those people, Irishmen.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how old Edward Georgie got in the country. My dad was building the Spyrock Road. The old Spyrock Road didn't go anywhere near this one did.
Yeah.
And Edward Georgie, he was working there on it.
He had a dairy there too.
Huh?
He had a dairy there.
Yeah. Oh, he had everything. He was quite a character.
Yet, he had this dairy, and I guess about 1939, the inspectors come and tested the cows for TB, and all of his cows was infected. They told him to get rid of them, and he took them over to Covelo. I think he sold them to a guy by the name of Hunt.
Yeah.
About a week or two later, that inspector showed up over in Covelo. Got him again.
How did you, this is for either of you, get to San Francisco whenever you went? Did you ever take the train down there?
All the time. It's the only way we could go, take the train.
So was that a daily train, or was there more than one train a day?
There was 4 trains until World War II started, and then they cut it back to 2 trains, but they had 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 and 4 was the night trains, 1 and 2 was daytime. And we usually took the night train because it would get down there in the morning, go across on the ferry at Tiburon.
How long did it take from Willits to the Tiburon ferry?
Well, I don't know. It seemed to me like 4 o'clock, 2 o'clock or something in the morning, we get on at Camp Rest, and 8 o'clock or something like that, we did Tiburon.
So 6 hours?
Yeah, it was 6 hours.
Would you have a sleeping accommodation?
They did, but we never could afford them.
So they had Pullman cars?
Oh,
then?
they had Pullman car. The night trains had Pullman car. They had a peanut butcher, A.B. the peanut butcher. It was on there. He sold candy and stuff like that on the train.
Did they serve meals on that day train, or just the snacks?
No, they didn't serve meals. No, they had sandwiches and stuff.
Do you remember how much it cost to ride the train, or your
We rode on
Yeah,
pass.
pass.
pass? You had a pass.
We had a pass, yeah.
What about Willits, go back to that recreation kind of opportunity, people going dancing and stuff. Seems like that was a big entertainment. Both at Nashmead, people went dancing in the big houses, and then also in the park here. Was that what you remember your parents doing, and that kind of adult entertainment?
Yeah, they had at the Robinson place. They had a few dances up there, and my uncle's place. They called it Pigeon Point, but I don't know why. But they had dances up there too. He made his living up there, gambling, and probably a little bootleg.
What about you, Mervin? Dancing?
I like to dance.
Where did you dance?
Every place.
Yeah.
What was the, in Laytonville, I mean, were there clubs back then? What?
Well, they used to hold dances in Layton. They only used to hold dances in Longville a lot, too. That building, the big building there.
Doc Keister's?
Huh?
Doc Keister's?
Doc Keister's?
Yeah.
No, before him.
Before him.
Was it a roadhouse, or?
Well, there was a little hotel there, because I stayed there part of the time when I was working there at Farley. Yeah, that down here in the park, they had their carnival in there too, along with the dance hall. That's those trees there. Some people think they've been in there for 100 years, but hell, I was a pretty big kid when there was no trees there.
So the carnival was actually right in the
Right
city park
there,
as well?
right there in the park.
That was a yearly event, like a fair kind of festival?
Yeah, every 4th of July they'd have a carnival.
I wanted to ask you both about the crops that used to grow here in Little Lake Valley and beyond.
Well, they raised lots of hay here at one time, and Frank Roop, or not Frank Roop, but John Roop, he raised lots of potatoes in that ranch he had out here. He was the supervisor at one time, John Roop was.
What else you got? You've got a cattle report in there. You were going to tell us about that livestock auction or something.
Oh, I can find it now. There was one of the deals that you got with a piece of property if you bought it from Baker.
Oh, this is the guy who promised you the pig?
Huh? Yeah.
Okay, this is a great story. Doesn't say there's a... Oh, here it is. If you bought property from this guy, you would be promised one brood sow, but no one ever got one.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, to be cared for and the proceeds divided according to a certain agreement.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
If they ever raised any pigs, Baker got them.
1917.
There's the livestock report in 44.
Yeah, so what about this livestock report? This is the prices of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a steer was $15.
I think it was 15 cents a pound, wasn't it?
50 cents lower than last week. $15 for the whole thing, looks like. You gonna say something about that, Persico? $15 a hundred. Okay, there you go. Anyway, there's all these prices. If anybody's interested, you could look at this document. It's kind of interesting relative to today. And that's 1944. Mountain lambs, shorn lambs, everything was a different kind of pricing. Shorn lamb, mountain lamb, ewes were different than good there's good ewes. There's ewes and then there's good ewes. Yeah, boy, it's complicated. Interesting.
Merv, you mentioned there used to be a traveling produce cart here in town.
Yeah, old man Arnold. He had a big old horse, and every now and then, you'd see him come to town. He lived out there on the, I don't know, maybe they call it East Valley Road that goes across, the one that goes across.
Center Valley?
Center Valley, yeah. But he raised vegetables and brought them to town in the cart.
So he sold them off of the cart.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, the dairy, Pedro and Sally girls, they had a little dairy out there, and they used to deliver milk around. Jamie and Laura and Lily, they used to be the girls that delivered milk
Right to your house.
to each house.
What about vegetable carts? It'd be kind of fun to have a vegetable cart or fruit carts around downtown.
Well, that old boy raised a big garden there. I can remember his name. His name is Arnold. Probably there's people here that remembered him. Lee might remember it. You remember old man Arnold, Lee? Huh?
Just vaguely.
Yeah.
Helen's going to say something. Helen?
No, I'm remembering.
Oh, okay.
So do
Edie probably remembers him.
there we go. Do either of you have any memories of the Hotel Willits or the Van Hotel when they were really in their prime?
Well, I got primed up there a few times.
Now, I made Hank promise not to tell all his drinking stories, so you get to chime in there, Hank. He never drank, he just knows people who did. Isn't that how it is?
Something like that.
Mike still thinks the same thing.
Uh-huh. Okay, so that's Ashton. We've been trying to get her to come up here and ask her grandpa to tell her favorite stories. You want to just come up for a second?
I have a couple stories that I remember, but
Uh-huh.
I can tell them from here, right?
No one can hear you on the audio if you stay there. Well, maybe your grandpa will tell the story if you prompt him.
I guess.
Yeah, come up here and have a seat.
Yeah. Now, you're fifth generation, right, Ashton?
Yeah, and I have a 9-month-old son who's 6th generation, so it's quite a bit. Scary up here. And I do still sit on my grandpa's lap, and he scratches it. So get to it. So my stories start out really, really young. My brother is 9 months and 1 day younger than me. So I'm 20, and he'll be 20 in December. Some of the very first memories, Dylan was 4 pounds when he was born, and the doctors put him on caffeine to get him to grow.
Oh.
Grandpa drank caffeine and thought it would just be cool to keep Dylan on it. So 19 years later, Dylan is 5 cups of coffee in the morning. If he doesn't have it, he's shaking. But I remember coffee in our bottles. As long as we were at Grandma and Grandpa's house, we could get it. So, and now I'm running a coffee shop. Also, growing up at the Grange, we were at all of the Christmas parties, and 2 years old, they hired Grandpa to be Santa Claus, and we wanted to sit on Santa's lap, but we were scared to death, and both of us were just freaking out. And so finally, Grandpa just gave in and pulled his beard off, and so we didn't believe in Santa from about 2 on. So they don't hire him to be Santa anymore because he just gives in and takes the beard off. I just remember growing up at the Grange every Sunday. He somehow convinced us to commit one Sunday a month to serve juice, and he made us Mickey Mouse pancakes in return. So we never got paid either. He paid us in food. It carried on.
You got pancakes?
Yeah, we got Mickey Mouse pancakes, what he calls them. I don't know. Those are my stories.
Those are your stories? What about your favorite story that you asked your grandpa to tell you?
Oh, Grandpa's favorite story, because Jacob, my baby's daddy, my man, he was driving the beer truck, and so when Grandpa found out, one of my favorite stories Grandpa tells is, where were you guys at? Up on the ridge on Garberville?
Yeah, we was at Fort Seward, going out of Fort Seward, and he couldn't go over to Garberville. There was too much snow. He had to go down the other way to some little town down there on the highway. But anyway, we was coming down the road and come around the corner, and there's a beer truck stopped right in the middle of the road, and the guy sitting out back drinking beer. Snow all over the ground, and we pulled up behind him, and he gave us a couple of 6-packs, and we had a couple to drink.
It was just going to go to waste, right?
It's just going to go to waste, yeah.
I had nothing better to do but sit in the snow and drink beer all day.
Yeah. There's another story I wanted to tell. Yeah. You remember Henry Kittenberg?
Yeah.
This one's about Henry Kittenberg. In 1942, my dad was at Bell Springs, foreman. And me and my brother were staying at Camp Rest going to school, and I think my sisters must have been going to Fortuna High School. And we walked back to Camp Rest on Sunday afternoon. And we come out of Tunnel 23, walked out on the Blue Rock Creek Bridge there, and Henry Kittenberg's up there fishing. He's got his old white mule tied up there, and he'd got after us down at Nashmead about something one time, and we didn't think that we was in the wrong, and we was going to get even with him. So this looked like a good time to get even with him, but we didn't know what we was going to do. So we walked back to track, and we found a torpedo and a spike and a piece of rag, and we tied that torpedo on that spike and crawled out on a bridge and tied that rag on that spike. We'd done this before, so we knew what we was doing. And dropped that spike down on the abutment of the bridge. And here it is, October, November, sunny afternoon, a few clouds floating around in the sky, and an old man down there fishing. And kerboom! A big smoke goes up, and the fishing pole goes across the creek, and he jumps on that mule, and up the hill they go, the old mule's tail going like that. And disappeared in the brush up there, and I started to stand up, and my brother said, no, he said, if he's got a gun, he'll shoot us. But, you know, to this day, I've wondered what that man thought. You know, 1942, the war had just started. You know, and everybody was on the edge anyway, you know, didn't know what was happening.
Japanese submarine?
I don't think it could get that far inland, but
What a torpedo was also called a what?
a torpedo was called it's a signal to the trains that you put on the rail, and they run over it, and it explodes. And you put 2 on the rail so far apart, and that's to slow them down. And then if you're flagging, you have one where you're flagging, and when they hit that one, they're supposed to stop. But anyway, I'm still like to know what that guy thought or told when he got home.
That was Ruth and Joy's dad.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, his name was Hurst. Oh.
Huh?
But old man
Kittenberg.
He married
Yeah.
their mother.
Yeah, Hurst. Yeah, and
Yeah,
the
Hurst.
Doc Hurst, yeah.
Doc Hurst. Well, Doc Hurst, he was alive when I was up there.
Yeah.
I used to shear Johnny Morgan's sheep when Johnny first come in there. And old Kittenberg, he was there then. He had a few sheep too, Kittenberg did.
Yeah. Yeah, he got after us up there at Nashville. I don't know what it was all about, but we didn't figure that he'd had any reason to get after us. But
So you got anything else to say, Ashton, before you leave? I think the Mercantile's calling you, isn't it?
It is. Speaking of the Mercantile, Grandpa has been coming in every day and keeps telling me, I need a new jean coat. I need a new jean coat. And so finally I get my jean coat in that I had ordered. And I told him come in and try something on, and if it fits, we'll save it for you. And so he came in about a week ago and tried on this jacket, and every day he's been coming in to check and make sure that I haven't sold that jacket even though we're not open.
It's that one, you gotta.
And so then this morning all the newspapers showed up because somehow it leaked. We were having a little soft opening, and so sure enough, Grandpa was there first thing while we were doing the last minute pricing, and they convinced me to do the first sell for the store, and Grandpa was the first customer, so that's really special. So I sold him the jacket.
someplace back there, she's got a picture. We'll take a picture.
Yeah, there's a picture somewhere. Grandma has that. So
All right, be in the paper?
I don't know.
I hope so.
I think so.
So how many of Hank's relatives are here
Love you.
tonight? Anybody left, or are you all down at the store eating ice cream?
There we go, over here.
All right. That's Hank's sister. Has he been telling the truth, Jane?
Oh, yeah, he's been telling the truth. When I think back about it, we lived there all of our life, actually. In fact, we were there yesterday, my husband and myself. He was born in Nashville, Francis. His mother lived up on the hill across the river, and when it was time for him to be born, she rode her horse down, stayed in the bunkhouse with her sister. And when he was born, back up the mountain they went on the horse. I mean, we really, there was no doctors, there was nothing. I mean, if we got sick, we were sent. You took the passenger train out if it was running in the winter. Lots of times there wasn't any train. There were slides or whatever. But, it was a way of life. We didn't know any different. Now I think about it, I wonder how we ever even made it to where we are now.
Strong.
Yeah, we did all with my mother. I can remember every day washing clothes by hand, making bread. 6 loaves a day she had to bake. And we just, it was just a way of life. But when we go up there now, it's just, this will be our schoolhouse, the one-room schoolhouse. We fixed it. I mean, we really got it nice. We have desks in there again, and the teacher's house, we redid it. And it's painted it inside now. It really looks, like the old school.
How do you get there now? Is this Nashmead you're talking, right? How do you get to Nashmead?
Well, Mr. Harwood over at Harwood's mill let us put a road in, and Mervin and my husband, they rode Mervin could say about getting bucked off of the red, what is it? I'm not sure what, a three-wheeler anyway. And he showed us where to put the road, and my nephew had I think we rented a cab and just, down the mountain they went, and we ended up with a road into Nashville after all those years. That's only like 20, well, maybe not even 20 years old. I think in the 80s we put the road in.
Excellent.
But
83.
what was it?
83.
83. anyway, I'm going to be 80 years old too on my next birthday, and so I think to myself, we've lived quite a life.
You have.
I drove bus over for the Round Valley School District when the railroad gave up. There was no more railroad section nationally. They quit doing that. The railroad just banned, I guess you'd say. So we moved to Dos Rios. And they needed a school bus driver. I didn't even know how to drive a car.
Is this your book, the start of your book, this Nashmead School News, or is this something just part of what you're researching, Jane?
It's some of my, the Nashmead School News. June Hayden, one of the teachers, you probably were with Rex Parker, daughter from
So she wrote some of this, and
She wrote every year she would write, it made a little Nashville News as long as she was a teacher.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
We were wondering if any pinches are here. Sir?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Marty?
Marty.
Yeah.
And how are you related to this gentleman?
He's my grandfather.
Ah.
Wonderful.
You gonna sit on his lap up here?
I'll go up.
Yeah, go sit there. It'd be
That's
nice.
great.
Yeah. This is Marty Pinches. You got a favorite story of your granddad's or anything you'd like to?
Oh, all of them are good.
Yes.
But one that I always bug him to tell me is, it's back when the West was being won pretty much, but when Clarence O'Farrell and you and Dad and that guy was running around out there robbing cabins. Tell him that one, that's that's my favorite.
Oh, this guy was coming into those cabins up there, and he was stealing everything that was loose, and oh, what a mess he'd make. He'd use the pots for his toilet, and the guy had to be out of his mind. And Marty's granddad on his mom's side come over to visit Marty and Gary and Sherry and Cheryl. And I had a young horse there that was just more horse than I needed when he was fresh. And I'd put him behind the Bronco and lead him over there, which was quite a little span. And I was going to ride around the ewe lambs that I had over there. And when I was told Gary that I was going to do that, he said, wait a minute, and Clarence and I will go with you. So Clarence, he was an old cowboy from way back, and he told me when we got over there, he says, that horse has got the best wind of any horse I ever seen. I said, yeah, he probably want to buck me off now. But I rode him all that day and didn't have no problem, but he did buck me off once, but I didn't let him do it again. And this particular day, we was coming back, and I seen this fella run. And I thought, funny that guy would run from us, and he was standing up against a tree like this, and I could see he had his hand on a 6-shooter. I told Gary, I said, if that guy pulls that gun out, you shoot. And hell, he wasn't any further than from here to that movie machine. And he started to pull it out, and Gary shot, and he come rolling out of there, and he wouldn't let go of that gun, though. And I told Gary, load up, and I said, if he pulls that gun, kill him. And he wasn't going to let go of that gun. I kicked it out of his hand. Well, he'd been in the hills for months and months, but he never happened to hit my sheep cabin. But all the rest of them around, boy, he did. And a lot of people thought that the Gross and this one lady, they didn't get along too good, and they thought the Gross was doing it just to be ornery, but it wasn't. It was this guy. And I asked him, I said, how come you got up in this country? And he said, well, when I was in prison, I studied all his maps, and I knew where everything was, and he come around there, and old Ike Shipley, did you know Ike?
I've heard of him.
Well, Ike come by there one day, and he said, Merv, I wish you'd have killed that SB. He said, he took my shoes and my best book. I don't want to kill a man for that. But the guy was a desperate guy. And when we took him, I got in the back with him, and I had a little old axe in the back that I used for cutting the wire on the bales, feeding the hays. And I noticed him all the time. I took the gun away from him, but I noticed him all the time. He almost wanted to get that axe. And he told the sheriff, he says, I ought to have killed all three of them. Well, he damn sure could have, because he was loaded for bear. But when he come rolling out, old Frank thought he'd have killed a skunk or something. He says, well, you got him, Gary.
Geez, that's the Wild West.
Yeah.
This book that you brought tonight, you showed me some stories this morning in it about Old Willits.
Yeah. Well, that's a good book.
Which book is this now? Which one?
It's Badges and Buckshot.
Badge and Buckshot.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are welcome to look at these things. Can't touch anything, but
got some pretty good pictures in it too.
Got some really old pictures of Willits in there.
Yeah. Well, Willits mostly was out to the old Bechtel house there. That was the hotel was right there. That's where those three fellas were when the cops caught them and they blindfolded them. And hell, it said they even put sacks on the feet, the guys that hung them. But I think they must have hung them at the bridge here by Leaks.
Now, when was that?
Well, the guy,
Because it said that they hung them.
that's where they hung that kid too?
They hung three of them there. Oh, it's a good story.
Now, there was a guy that worked on the railroad, he used to talk about, called the guy killer because he hung three guys down there off the bridge by the high school.
I don't know what bridge it was.
But anyway, there was they had robbed a stage someplace, and some kid had come riding into town, and they all come into town together, and they hung the kid with them.
We hung three of them all at one time.
He was innocent.
It said in that book there.
But he was there, and
But some of them there, that's like the crew that the Frost and the coach.
yeah.
Well, one of the Frosts killed his nephew in the feud. They were, according to that book, and I think it's about right. I don't know what they called Scotch Valley. Does anybody here know? It's Rock Tree or no? Scotch Valley out here.
By the Folsom Ranch.
Yeah. Well, you're pointing down south. I'm going to point out this way.
All right, so we're talking about killings in the Wild West here. Let's open it up something for another kind of question. Anyone?
Marty, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. Okay, any of you people have questions about the old days? Something came up for you, you didn't get enough information, you want to, yeah.
I just, they're starting to allude to it a bit, but I'm just wondering, what was law enforcement like in the early days around here? Was there one sheriff here in town, like Gunsmoke, or what was it like?
Early days of law enforcement.
Well, Jake Toms, he was the chief of police when I was a young kid. And they didn't have no trouble like they do today with them people that robbing and stealing. But the same way with the school. If they caught you uptown smoking, when I was going to high school here, you got kicked out for 10 days. And that,
Smoking tobacco.
yeah, smoking cigarettes. They were pretty strict. But they didn't monkey around any. And our sheriff then was Ralph Burns, and he was a pretty tough sheriff.
Other question? Yeah?
In a couple of those Laytonville books, they talk about herding pigs or herding turkeys down to San Francisco. How'd they do that?
The question is, how did they herd pigs and turkeys down to San Francisco? They mention it in a couple of those old-time Laytonville books.
Well, I don't know. I never seen them herd any turkeys, but I seen them bring a lot of hogs. We drove hogs to Longville to ship them. That's where most of the livestock was shipped around Laytonville at Longville.
Onto trains?
Yeah, they had corrals there and had a damn nice yard there. Well, they had one here too out by the high school. A couple of times we drove, my dad sold Folsom Ranch out there, but it wasn't Folsom. It was, somebody here might remember them. I think the name was Hyatt and Wyatt, the two partners. And they bought 50 head of mother cows off my dad, and we drove them from Laytonville. We drive them to Charlie Talkington's, which is the head of the valley up there where you see the elk, one day, and then the next day we drive them to Sherwood, and then the next day we drive them down here. And they took them to Bill Muir's out here, and the fellows that bought them, they took them from there on. But that's where Circle W got their iron, was from the two fellows that bought the cows. Then they called it Circle W up until Folsom's got it.
So 3-day trip to drive those
Yeah,
cattle to the
yeah,
train.
you couldn't drive them too fast. If you did, you might kill one of them.
You remember anything about shipping it?
There was a rancher at Alder Point, Anzini, and his dad back in before the trains run. Joe Anzini, said that they herded 3,000 turkeys from Alder Point to Eureka in the fall of the year and sold them at 50 cents a pound. And they took them up before Thanksgiving, and they kept them alive up there for Christmas and New Year's.
They herded them by foot?
By foot, yeah.
Across, wow,
From
Alder Point.
Alder Point to Eureka.
This was before the trains ran?
Before the trains ran, and then after the trains, they shipped them by rail.
Well, those trains were pretty busy with livestock at one time.
Yeah.
Michael?
Yeah, I wanted to know about the potato farming that was done here. You said that there was some potatoes grown here at one time?
Potato farming?
Yeah, Roop,
What part of the valley was that?
just out here by the feed store, just down there. John Roop, he was a supervisor at one time here. Well, there's probably people out there. Fritz probably remembers them.
Well, didn't that Northwest Mill up there, wasn't
Yeah,
that Northwest, they had a garden down here someplace.
Well, they owned, Northwestern owned all that property down in there that John Ford's on, where he gets his organic beef.
Couldn't sell the potatoes because they had a black spot in them. And I think if you grow potatoes today, you'll find a black spot in them. That's what stopped the market on them.
The black spot was like from the soil here in Willits?
Yeah, so I didn't have potatoes. In fact, I got a history book about that. They could tell as to where they were growing in both fertile valley, land and everything.
There you go, Michael. You talk to Fritz, he's got a book on it. And Helen had something to say about potatoes too.
Future farmers raised a bunch of potatoes there where Shorts lived.
What part of the valley is that, Helen?
Where across from the Schusters, where Shorts lived.
Right in, almost in town.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay. Any other questions?
At one time, there was a fellow out here, and I don't think of his name. His wife was a nurse. Ed Hayes, him and his dad, they farmed a lot of land here at one time. The Hayeses did. I used to buy seed grain off of them every now and then.
Any other questions?
Well, Lee, you ought to have some stories.
No, it's your story.
Well, if we're done with questions, maybe we can let these guys go home to bed. Or play cards or whatever is going to happen. You guys complete with this? We'll, let's give them a hand.
Thank you. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Hell, I want to. Good job, boss. I wanted to show you that saddle that's in this book.
She just took it down to get it.
I think that saddle I rode, Howard Simmerly bought 2 of them, $28.
Family. Yeah.
Price is on them there.
Yeah, I saw that.
Thanks a lot for your stories, really appreciate it.
See you, boss.
Yeah.